You asked a question, you go to UCLA, and you asked a question at this J Street panel where you said that you want the religious space in Jewish life to be one that is not monopolized by Zionism. That's the way I interpreted it. Did I hear you right, and what do you mean by that?
What I mean is, and I was actually talking with some other people just a few minutes ago who were expressing these thoughts, that Zionism, or support for Israel, has replaced belief in God. Belief in the Ten Commandments, the Halakha, the Jewish tradition, as the core of organized Jewish religion.
Yes.
And in my view, if you look at the Bible, that's idolatry.
Yes.
It's sacralism.
Yes.
And I don't find that okay, that people, even if I'm not a religious fundamentalist, that people should be valued more based on their political opinions in organized Jewish life than on the overriding religious belief.
Great. I am, as I think you know, I'm an anti-Zionist Jew, and I'm also not religious. I'm curious to hear, to what degree does Jewish religion inform your life? If feel free talking about, not in depth, but just, is it an important source of values and guidance in how you conduct your life?
Jewish values are, to a certain extent, important. I follow the traditions in terms of the holidays and feasts, some of the fasts and so forth. But even more importantly, when people look in the Bible, and I haven't really done so much myself, but definitely with the help of Rabbi Chaim, UCLA Hillel, who's a great rabbi, I should add. I could go to all his services, and there is a real, a lot of Jews don't look at, a real imperative to, for instance, economically help the poor.
Yes.
To help clothe, for instance, if your debts are sort of lying loose for 50 years, then you have to, after 50 years, forgive their debts. Which you don't find, it's ironic you associate Judaism with usury, which is also almost more of a social convention, a result of history than of the actual religious belief, which is very much against taking advantage of others.
Interesting.
And the same thing with obeying and respecting your parents, respecting the elderly, justice to the poor. And I feel that sort of this Jewish nationalism overrides that by promoting ethnocentrism and ethnic-based relations over obedience to
last night, Jeremy Ben-Ami said that unfortunately the world is getting more tribal and universalism is not gaining any footing in terms of the way that people deal with one another. So therefore, anti-Zionists like myself are basically magical realists. He was suggesting by that. There has been a fight between Zionists and anti-Zionists. It seems to me that one of the things that came through in your statement and in what you said before we started our conversation is you don't particularly want to be engaged in that kind of argument. Am I right? Did I hear you right? And why don't you see, where are you on the Zionist, anti-Zionist question?
Well, I'd say that I'm not a Zionist in that I believe the founding of Israel was a mistake. If it weren't up to me, I would have actually sought after the war to demand greater compensation and greater justice on the part of the European countries, not just Germany, but Poland, France, that stood by and for years before that ostracized their Jewish populations. If you look at Germany today, it's once again an economic powerhouse, dominating Europe because it never really had to pay full price. And I'm not an anti-Zionist, however, in that though I believe that what Israel did, Israel's founding, that Israel was essentially founded as a colonial entity, I just don't see, if you look at the collective point of view, and the collective point of view, a reference in this case, is the whole Middle East. A one-state solution is just too chaotic and presents too much of a risk in terms of political instability, festering sectarian ethnic tensions that could potentially rivet the whole region, much as we're seeing with Syria right now.
Got it.
I do support a two-state solution at the moment, but I'd prefer to be a more just two-state solution.
A more
just
yes.
two-state solution.
Finally, may I get your name and ask you any kind of personal question about? You're obviously very knowledgeable, and you're very young. I want to ask you how you've come to your degree of understanding at your age, if you will tell me about that.
I read a lot of books.
How old are you?
Newspapers. I'm 21.
Okay.
My fourth year of college. And, I always enjoyed reading.
I see.
Current events.
And may I ask where you're from?
Los Angeles.
I see.
Grew up and raised there.
I'm sorry.
Grew up and raised there. So.
Grew up in
Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And may I use your name in this? May we say your name in this?
Give my last name, perhaps.
You decide. You make the call.
My last name's Liu.
Okay. And what do you want to do in life?
I want to look into the moment to take some time off after school and then pursue a graduate degree. Perhaps go work in public policy, public affairs, because I believe that's an area where I can make a difference in the world.
I see. And ultimately, do you want to be at a university or in Washington or a power center or in the academy? Have you figured that out?
Preferably in Washington or in a power center, because academics, they have an effect on opinions, but they don't really have much of a say.
I see. And I said finally before, but one last question, because your ideas are so interesting to me. What if one of the Zionists here said to you, I really want you to move to Israel. You would love Israel. You've got to see Israel. You've got to be part of that society. We need brains, young Jewish brains like yours in Israel. How would you respond to that appeal?
Actually, I've already been to Israel. Some of my skepticism of Zionism stemmed from that first trip to Israel, where I heard blatant racism on the part of people, friends, and exchange students who I was with. To be honest, I definitely feel that I hold an attachment to the conflict.
Yes.
From my beliefs.
Yes.
From my religious background.
Yes.
I'm actually interested perhaps in going on some sort of conflict resolution trip that my school offers next year.
I see.
Where I get to hear from both sides.
Yes.
But I don't think I would be able to move to Israel.
I see.
Especially leave America for Israel. Not only because I love America, but because it is just too much of a foreign society.
Yes. But when you say that you're attached to the conflict, are you saying that you feel that you have some role to play as an American in helping to resolve this conflict?
Especially as a Jew. Because people take Jewish support for Israel so often for granted.
Mr. Liu, thank you so much for sharing your ideas. It's been a wonderful talk.
It's my pleasure.